in a bit. We also watch the Bill Nye seasons. So, summary. Find where that is in your notes. I think there is a summary. Right under it says, how do seasons work? So find in your notes right here, and we can fill this in. The Earth's axis is tilted around 23.5 degrees from the vertical. Because of this, light from the sun hits the Earth at different angles during the Earth's annual journey around the sun. In winter, the northern hemisphere is tilted away from the sun, and the southern hemisphere experiences summer. In summer, the northern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun, and the southern hemisphere experiences winter. And then near the equator, what we call the tropics, the sun hits more or less directly all year long, and that's why around the equator it's hot year-round. Any of you been to the equator? I have. Did you stand with one foot in the southern hemisphere and one foot? Because there's monuments right along the equator, so you can stand with one foot in the southern hemisphere, one foot in the. It's a great little picture selfie thing. No, well, you need to. I student taught for 3 weeks in Ecuador, which is the Spanish word for equator. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So you know what? A great test question, again, not on Tuesday's test, but on your next test, would be for me to give you a picture like this, but leave the seasons off and simply say, hey, right here, is this winter or summer for us in the northern hemisphere? Hey, right here, is this winter or summer for us in the northern hemisphere? And then if I tell you which way the Earth is going, which season comes after summer? What season comes after summer? Fall. And which season comes after fall? And which season comes after winter? You know what? I could ask you to fill in the missing seasons. It'd be a nice little 4-mark question. Okay? Solstices. In the northern hemisphere, one of my favorite days of the year, not that far away, summer solstice is the longest day of the year. Usually occurs around June 21st. I think this year it's the 22nd, but I haven't looked that far ahead yet. It's your birthday? So your birthday is also on the longest day of the year? Well, isn't that special? And then we also have the winter solstice. It's the shortest day of the year. Usually occurs right around December 21st. And this goes back to, I can't remember who asked the question last time, why it's the 21st. We started our calendar on a stupid day. Really, we should probably start our calendar on December 21st, the final day, the first day of winter, the shortest day of the year. And then every day for the rest of the year will be getting longer and longer and longer until you got to summer. By the way, as soon as you get to June 21st, it's the longest day of the year. What that means, Kian, is on the 22nd, the days start getting shorter already. That's why in August, even though it's still hot, the sun's going down at about 7 p.m. and 6 p.m. But by that time, the northern hemisphere has had time to warm up, and the land has warmed up, and so there's still lots of radiant heat. That's our summer. Next page. Land of the midnight sun. In the far northern latitudes, above 66 degrees north, does anybody know what latitude we are at? So 0 degrees is the equator, 90 degrees is the North Pole. Where are we? 49th parallel is the border. The Canadian-US border runs along 49 degrees. So we're a little bit north of 49 degrees, not quite at 50, it's like 49 point something degrees.
I was close though.
You're close.
I was 45.
You were not close.
What?
Okay. 45 degrees would be somewhere around Portland, Oregon. Pretty far south. And in these northern latitudes, it's even more extreme. In fact, during the summer solstice, if you're above 66 degrees, you get at least one day that's 24 hours long. The sun gets close to the horizon, but it never quite sets below the horizon. You always see it peaking, and so you have a 24-hour day. Oh, but the trade-off is, during the winter solstice, you get at least one 24-hour night. Sun never makes it up. At least, the further north you go, the longer it lasts. Speaking of sun never showing, eclipses. We have two main types of eclipses, solar eclipses and lunar eclipses. Which one do you think is an eclipse of the sun, solar or lunar? You all know what the word solar means, okay? Solar means sun. Lunar eclipse means the moon. So let's talk about these. Every so often, the moon will cross between the earth and the sun. Fairly often, except like every few years, except the shadow it casts only hits a small part of the earth. So we haven't had a good one here for a while. And when the moon does that, it blocks the sun's light and it casts a shadow across the earth. We call this a solar eclipse. Yep, but not a solar. Lunar ones happen way more often, it turns out. We call this a solar eclipse. You have a blank diagram, so you have blanks to fill in. Label your diagram. So you're going to label it, hey, that's the sun. You guys have the big circle there too. This is the moon. Your diagram is slightly different from mine in that I found that one online. It has lovely blanks, but you can figure out what's what, right? So moon, earth, those are the obvious ones. You can put a little earth right there. And then what we're going to talk about, there's two types of shadows when you get an eclipse. There's an umbra, that's the big dark shadow, and then there's the penumbra, which is the lighter shadow. If you were living in this lighter area, you would get a partial solar eclipse. You would see part of the sun carved out and black, but you'd also still see part of the sun. It would be dim, be kind of twilighty. But if you're lucky enough to be in the umbra, the sun would totally vanish. You would have nighttime for about 3 minutes. If you lived near a farm, you would see animals start to think that it was nighttime and start to think about, like the cows would start to come in for the night. Birds would start to try and go to sleep because they don't know what's going on. They just know it's gotten dark. It'd be pretty cool to see. Hey, you know what? This would be a great diagram to put on your Chapter 12 test and have you fill in the labels. In other words, I like this question, I like this question, I like this question. Why would I say that? Okay. You can expect to see that diagram. So, some of it should be pretty easy, free marks. Damien, I'm going to assume all of you know the sun. I'm going to assume all of you know the moon. I'm going to assume all of you know the earth. Umbra and penumbra. That's the gray shadow area and the really dark shadow area. And you can see why. Here, the sun's completely blocked off. Here, this part of the sun's rays managed to still make it to the earth. Gesundheit. Oh, and once again, not to scale, because if I did this to scale, I'd need a project screen the size of the gym or something. In a lunar eclipse, the Earth passes between the sun and the moon. And the moon becomes blacked out. Or, if you're in the penumbra, very, very reddish looking. In fact, it's called a blood moon, because it looks very dark red, lost in the Earth's shadow. Am I labeling or labeling? Oh yeah, can you label this diagram as well? So this diagram, you have another blank one. Label the sun, label the Earth, label the moon, and then you have the penumbra or penumbral shadow and the umbra or umbral shadow. And again, Jordan, although your diagram doesn't look exactly like mine, you can look at the arrows and figure out what they're talking about, yeah? Yeah? Okay. Nicole, in about 10 minutes. Not just yet. Good? Put your pencils down. So August 21st, 2017. Set your calendars. We got an eclipse coming up. Homework before I turn you loose. You pause the video. So the first bit of homework, it's a little 2-pager. This is on eclipses and seasons. Fill those in, probably take you about 5 minutes. And then the second handout, this is a summary of section 12.1. This is both from your notes, but also if you turn your text to page 410, I didn't cover every single thing in your notes necessarily as on page 410. So as you read through the section, fill in the definitions. These would be good vocabulary words for your chapter 12 test. So geocentric model, heliocentric model, umbra, penumbra, meteoroid, meteorite, meteor. I snuck those in last chapter, but they're actually this chapter. Number 2 says list several structures that were built by people of ancient times. There's 5 listed in your textbook. So basically, read through the textbook and you can kind of fill in these notes as we go along as well. This is your little study guide for section 12.1.